Hey everyone, welcome to the show again. Once again, we're going to have a chat about some new features in .NET 6, in particular looking at System.Text.Json, and we'll look at some news, .NET news, and open telemetry support, specifically metrics support in ASP.NET Core as well. So let's dig in. We have today a bit of news, a bit of controversy in the .NET space. So there's this blog post where Dimitri here is talking about adding hot reload support to Visual Studio and the .NET CLI, I guess. There is a section right towards the bottom which has caused a bit of controversy, adding hot reload support to .NET Watch. So .NET Watch, you can run that command, and if you make some changes to your code, it will automatically recompile your code and keep your application running. Very useful. I use this tool quite a bit when I'm developing ASP.NET Core websites or APIs. And they actually did add hot reload support to this command, but removed it just because they weren't able to support it properly, I guess, and didn't have time to complete the feature. This has caused a bit of controversy because normally when you take something away, give something to people and take something away, they don't like it. So what I would say is, it's something that don't be too distressed about it. It takes a lot to build a feature like this, and we just need to be patient and wait for them to finish it, and it will come back. And right now it's only available if you use Visual Studio 2022, which people don't like because you have to pay for Visual Studio 2022, at least if you're a business. If you're a developer working in open source, you can get the community edition for free. I think the preview edition as well is for free. You can probably use that. Don't quote me on that one. So don't worry about that too much, is my answer there. And then going back to my .NET 6 improvements mega thread. So this is my continuing efforts to upgrade some of my .NET project templates in the .NET Boxed repo to .NET 6 and C# 10. So there's a Swagger API, a GraphQL API, Microsoft Orleans, and a NuGet package, which makes it really easy to make NuGet packages. Only a few checkboxes remaining now to look into. I thought we'd take a look at this one today. Add System.Text.Json source generators. So there's a giant blog post over here about the subject, and I've just kind of reread this blog post. It does take a while to get through. It's pretty big, and what I'm just going to do is fire up Visual Studio 2022 and create a new project really quick, and it'll just be like a console app, and we'll try out some of this code and discuss it and maybe plug it into an ASP.NET Core app as well. So I'm just going to create yet another blank application to try out some of this code. So what is this code doing? So source generators are a way to generate code at compile time. So it's, writing code to generate other code. Sounds crazy, but it works, and it makes your application faster. So how is that connected with System.Text.Json? Well, you can now generate some code to make your serialization and deserialization using this System.Text.Json serializer faster. So the way you can do that is, let's say we have a person class like this. Let's plug that into our code. We'll just kind of move some of these windows around a little bit. We can just make this public, I think. Still haven't quite got over my cough. I hope to get over it soon. And to normally, when you're using System.Text.Json, you can use JSON Serializer. Is it JSON Serializer? Why can't I get it? JSON Serializer.serialize. Yeah, there we go. Don't know what I was missing there. Let's create a new person. Person equals new person. Oops. I can't type today. What's going on? First name equals Rehan. Oh, I'm not a fan of that feature. Last name equals. Okay, so we have a person. For top level statements must precede namespace and type declarations. We don't have any. I haven't really used these top level namespaces much. I think there's a generic version of this. Cool. Oh, that's why. That's what it's complaining about. I need the class at the bottom. And we'll just console.writeLine the JSON, and we'll console.read so we don't close the application. So there we go. We fired up our quick application to serialize something. And what's that going to do for us? We've got our first name and our last name. Nice. Now this new code to add source generator support works a little like this. So you add a new JSON context type. I'm going to call this a person JSON serializer context because I like to be clear about what I'm doing. And then you add an attribute to it. In this case, I guess it makes sense to make it internal. Normally your entity, you're going to keep that public, and you can have a, why is it complaining about this? Does not implement abstract member. There's no argument given. Not sure why it's complaining there. We'll carry on regardless. Oh, we need to implement some of these things over here. Oh, these are things that are generated for you. Oh, I see. Okay. So that's why it was complaining. If we build this, in theory, this built successfully. So I'm not sure why this is still erroring. Very strange. It builds successfully. Oh, it's gone. It took a minute. No, it's back. Errorless. We probably need to just restart Visual Studio or something. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Let's ignore that error for now. Let's all rebuild. Rebuild solution. No, it doesn't like it. All right, carry on. So what you can now do, instead of writing this code to serialize a person, you can now write well, you can now write this code. So we'll take that person.default.person, and that gives us our JSON. They were serializing to bytes, and we'll take our JSON and deserialize it back again. And we'll just get the person.firstname. And the person class name and close out that out and hit F5. Let's see, we're missing a semicolon somewhere. Where is that? Oh, did I type the colon instead? That's my bad. And then although it's still erroring, it should still be working. Where's our window? We've lost our window. That's weird. That's very strange. Not sure what's happening there. Oh, it was hiding behind us, behind the window. I can't actually see the window there. Oh, I see what's happened. So I'm using the new Windows Terminal preview version. And there's a new feature in here. If you go to settings, default terminal application, Windows Terminal rather than the Windows console host. So I think changing that setting has now caused this to open up in the Windows Terminal instead, which is pretty cool, I guess. So we have our application and it's still working. Now, if we scroll down a little, it talks about some settings that you can set when you want to serialize something. So if we go back to our previous example, and we'll just take that back and we'll just bring this back for a minute and we'll set a new JSON serializer options. Options equals, and I always forget the setting here. Property naming policy. Camel case. So if we set this now, run that, we should get camel case output for our JSON. Before, I think we were getting title case or Pascal case. This is a bit odd because, here we go, our F is lowercase and our L is lowercase. But how do we do that using this new system? That's what we're here to find out. Because there is no way to set JSON serializer options on this particular overload. So if we go to definition on it, we can see that's not the overload I'm using. It's confused because of that error. But the overload I am using is this JSON type info one. This guy. This is the particular overload. Oh, that's serialized async. I forgot that I could serialize asynchronously. Yeah, you should probably do that. Await. Let's just await that. And let's see if that still works. Why is it complaining now? Cannot convert from person to stream. Oh, it takes a stream if you do this. Yeah, let's go back. And let's just check that. Async, all the async overloads, yeah, they take a stream. So if you're gonna use a stream, use the async versions. Should be a lot better, should be a lot faster. And don't forget to pass in a cancellation token. Easily forgotten. Okay, let's go back and switch back to this version. So the way you can set some options is using this attribute over here. So I think we need to bring in a namespace. That's interesting. Interesting that I have to bring in a package for this attribute, but not for this guy. That's odd. Okay, whatever. Are you gonna... You know what, I think I'm gonna quickly restart... Oh, is it back? I'm gonna quickly restart Visual Studio because it is behaving quite oddly. We'll start console app 3 again. Why can't it find you? I have that attribute. I have that. Very strange. Let's see what's going on here. It's able to find these guys. That's in System.Text.Json. Yeah, weird. I'm in .NET 6, aren't I? Yeah. .NET 6. Very strange. How? What are we missing? JSON serializer options attribute. That is the options class, but not the attribute. Why doesn't... Is this just wrong? Scroll down and... Oh, they made a mistake in the blog post. JSON source generation options, I think it's supposed to be. Property naming policy. What have they got over here? Yeah, that's the one. They just spelt it wrong. And then I think we don't need this package either. Yeah, there we go. Property naming policy, camel case, generation mode. Now this guy is interesting. So there's different ways you can generate your code to make your serialization faster and slower. And we'll come on to that in a second. So I'm just going to set this back to .default. In fact, I don't even think you need to set that. Now, if we hit 5, we get our lowercase f and L again. Now, hard coding your property naming policy like this is not very good, I think. It's a bit annoying because normally you in ASP.NET Core, you have your JSON serializer options specified once in the whole application and saved off into the dependency injection container. And then that's used everywhere for serialization. And so if you change this property naming policy here, it would work for your whole application. Whereas here, you're going to have to do it individually for each JSON serializer context you create. So that's kind of annoying. I also wonder if normally when you're creating a class, a person class, you'd put that in a file. And I'm wondering if you could just do that to keep these things together. Would that still work? That it didn't like, did it? Unless it's, of course. Let's do that. No. Person dot. No, it didn't like that, did it? You can't make it a kind of a nested class. Didn't like that. So let's go back. You're going to have to keep that separate. Which is fair enough. Not as flexible, I guess. So let's go back to the blog post and talk about these generation modes. So there's two modes, and there's a default setting. And I believe the default is serialization. Oh no, it's both. And this is a flagged enumeration, so you can set multiple settings in one go. So what this is doing is, if you set it to this mode, it writes source code, it generates source code to optimize the serialization logic, and if you do this one, it generates code for type metadata around the type. So what am I talking about there? I guess that's all the JSON object and the JSON property fields. And if you do set it to default, which I think is the default generation mode, default, then that just does both. So in actual fact, you probably never want to change that. Yeah, you'd probably want to keep it like that. But there is another thing. So there's another way you can call this serializer. You can, instead of calling JSON serializer, you can take this person writer person I think, yeah, you need a stream writer here. And this is our JSON. I'll just comment that one out for a second. How have they done that? Default.person.serialize writer.flash. We have to have at the end. So you can just go via the person and serialize instead. Although I don't seem to be able to for some reason, and I'm getting a lot of strangeness in Visual Studio 2022. Perhaps if I unload and reload this project, would that help? Okay, that seemed to have helped somewhat. Where's the serialize function? What do we have on here? Oh, there's our JSON serializer options. So you can pull those out. Let's check those. options dot what was it? Property naming policy dot toString. And let's just comment out this code for a moment. There's our camel case naming policy. So that seemed to have worked. You can pull out this property here like so. Not sure why we can't call this. There might be some error in this blog post again. I'd probably just always use the JSON serializer. Yeah, there's a few ways to do this. And then there is this way of doing things as well. So let's try this one out. So we have, if I paste this code in, there's our JSON serializer options. We've already got one, so I'm just going to remove that. We have our context, and we're newing one up here. So new, I'm still a fan of var, and we're passing in our options here, and then we take the context and then serialize that instead. Is that going to work? Yeah, so that totally worked. We got lowercase l and f still, and it's using our JSON serializer option. So if I change this back to, oh, if I just remove that, I guess, is that the default to not have camel case? Okay, we got back our title case. Odd that is this, oh, it's a class, not an enum. Okay, so this is good. We've brought back the ability to set our options, but I understand that this comes at a cost. At a slight performance cost, that is. Generating type metadata, initialization logic. You don't get the improved serialization throughput. Runtime metadata generation is shifted to compile time. So this is only taking the benefits provided by metadata source generation and not the serialization. So that's interesting. Yeah, it's a shame you lose some of the source generation, the serialization speed. Just having a quick read there. So there's a section down here on the serialization performance, and it's a bit unclear. They don't mention whether this, so they're comparing it with standard serialization with the source generated serialization. So i.e. This guy against this guy. And it's supposedly about 40% faster. And allocations are 0. And in this case, when you're doing collections, it's 60%, between 60 and 50% faster. And you're also dropping all allocations as well, which is pretty nice. But that doesn't mention if it's the serialization mode or the metadata mode. Oh, there's the gist. We can have a look at the gist to see what mode they actually used. And we have, they're using the default mode. Oh, interesting. They're using the default mode. Okay. Clean up serializer. There's our baseline. They're just serializing it. And there's our, let's take this code and investigate the performance benefits of create a new console app. The performance benefits of metadata versus serialization mode. Let's really quickly do that. So let's create a new console app. We'll stick our code in here. And we will bring in benchmark.net, which I've used a fair bit in the past. Very nice library. So we have our JSON context here. Let's set the mode on this one. So if we go back to our previous project, grab this guy. And ideally, we'd use camel case mode. So this is default. And we'll go with, we'll create another one. This is going to use the mode. This is going to use metadata mode. So we'll call this metadata. And the third one, we'll call it serialization. And now we have 3 contexts. And we'll call this one default. And we'll create 2 more. And we'll just stick the word metadata in front of this one. And this one. And serialization in front of this one and this one. And we'll also take the default one and pass in some options ourselves. So how do we do that again? We create some options. Create some options over here. Give that an access modifier of private. Options. And we need to pass those options into, oh, we need to new up our context. Default context, private, default context equals new default context. And I think we passed the options in here. No, where was it? That's right, we should be able to pass the options in. Not sure why that's complaining just now. And then we'll take our default context in this one, and this is custom options, and we'll go dot serialize context context dot person. build that. Why is that complaining? There is a difference here. They're using a person array as opposed to a single person. I don't know if that makes a difference. Should I just try changing that? No, it's still complaining. Does not implement abstract member. That's almost as if the, let's unload it again. Reload that. Source generators seem to be really flaky in Visual Studio. Is it complaining now? Program does not contain a static main method suitable for an entry point. That's because we have a namespace here, and if we remove that and build it again, that should work now. No? I'm not used to this new world where we have let's bring back our namespace. Implicit usings. Does not contain a main method suitable for an entry point. Oh, I know. I think I can go back to not having a namespace and then just do program dot what did I do? I have benchmarks elsewhere. Let me open them up and find out what I actually did to get benchmark.net to run. Program. There we go. That's the line of code I needed. Here we go. Let's run this benchmark now. Oh. Default context. Just initialize that. Make sure that builds. And then set as startup project. You have to run it in release mode without debugging. Now you're not normally supposed to do things while you are, you're not supposed to have a lot of stuff running in the background while you're running a benchmark. But, so I have OBS and things running to record this. But let's see if this works. It's going to take a moment, but we'll soon have our answers to all our questions. My machine's fans are spinning up right now as we speak. It's taking off. This machine is a Dell work machine. Its fans do like to spin up when it's doing a lot of work. I have one particular .NET project where it really takes off. It's also using source generators and is generating probably about 1,000 classes. So source generators do seem to be quite taxing, although I am generating a lot of classes in that particular scenario. I'm just not going to touch the machine just now to avoid contaminating the experiment. In theory, I've got OBS running constantly, and it shouldn't be, there shouldn't be a major impact, I hope, from that. OBS is using a constant amount of CPU, around 5%, so hopefully our results are not skewed too much. Normally I'd close all my other applications and run this. Let's see. Cool, it's run. It's run through. Let's have a quick look at, should I just check here? Yeah, we can get an idea here. So the standard serializer, that's our baseline. That took 213 nanoseconds, nothing allocated, interestingly. Even this serializer. The default serializer cut 30% off, so we're not seeing as much of a saving as the benchmark on the blog. The metadata serializer didn't do anything, which is what we expected. It's not going to help with serializing or deserializing. The serialization serializer did about the same as the default, so that's what we expected. Custom options serializer did about the same as the default as well. In fact, it's faster than the default. So that's interesting. So it sounds like we should just always use that then, because there seems to be no cost to passing in some options. And that's what you really want. You want to be able to pass in custom options into your serializer so that you can customize them. And let's do that right now. Let's do that as the next thing. So I'm going to create a new ASP.NET Core Web API. .NET 6, don't need HTTPS. Use controllers, don't need OpenAPI support. And we'll create that. And what we'll do is we'll copy in our person class. How are we doing for time? We'll copy in our person class and our generator. This guy. JSON serializable camel case. Oh, we don't want to set that from here. We'll comment this out for now. We'll come back to that. So we have our person serializer context. And what I'm a bit confused about is whether we need person or person array. So here, they were serializing a single person. And yet they created a context for a person array. Interesting. Well, we should check that. I wonder if, let's rerun that benchmark and change all of these to be a person as opposed to a person array. And Control F5 that. That will be running in the background. And in the meantime, we'll just carry on typing because I don't think it's going to cause that much of a problem. we go back to the blog, there's a really small section that talks about how this plugs into ASP.NET Core. In particular is this line. Oh, they used an array here as well. Interesting. So in actual fact, in here we have a weather forecast type. So we should create a weather forecast array. Let's do it an array type. Seems like the best policy is to always do an array. We'll change that. And then we want to add controllers, add JSON options, and we have our options. Where's the add context? Add context. Add context. Maybe it's a an extension method or something. No, I don't see that type. What am I missing? There it is. The blog post is wrong yet again. It needs to be options dot JSON serialization options dot add context. Not great. That blog post, it seems to have, it's a really long blog post, very interesting, but seems to have made a lot of mistakes. So we've added our context. So in theory, it should be using this now to serialize our content. So if we run this now, let's see how our benchmark did. A benchmark ran, and we seem to get the same or very similar results there. So it looks like you can do either an array here or a single, but it's probably better to do an array because an array works for a single weather forecast or an array of weather forecasts. So if you're serializing an array or a single one, it will work for both. So go with that always. So let's fire up our API now. Set a start project. F5 that. Oh, I'm in release mode. Go back to debug mode. I'm not used to having Visual Studio using the Windows terminal like this. So if we need to go to 1593, just fire up a new window, just bring it across. I always use Chrome for debugging for some reason. I'm an avid Firefox fan, and I like the extensions and the security around it, and I don't trust Google. If we go, what's the controller name? /weather forecast. That should work. /weather forecast. There we have it. There's our temperature, our weather forecast. What happens now, if we go here, change that to stop. Unspecified. I'm not even sure why that's even there. It's already camel case. So what if we set this to camel case and we set the options here to not be camel case? JSON naming policy. I can't remember how to do that. What's the other JSON naming policies that you can have? Or you can set it to null. And that's the default, I guess. If I hit F5 on that, we can go back to our API, hit refresh. Yeah, we've gone back to uppercase. And it looks like this options is not used because we set that to camel case. So you can totally get rid of that. Don't need that. Stop. And now we have a central location where we can specify our naming policy. I think JSON camel case is the default anyway. So yeah, that's how we can add that context and just get a bit of extra serialization or deserialization performance out. I wonder how we can actually test this and benchmark it. Not sure it's going to be easy without setting up a whole integration test using the web host factory. I think we'll leave that. I think it is probably using it, probably getting some extra performance out of it like this. So we'll stick with that. What does the documentation say again? It would be nice if we could just specify anything that implemented this, that had this attribute, and automatically add that in here, rather than having to individually list out all the options here. There is an add context method, but it doesn't seem to be a non-generic version of it, which would allow us to do that. So it looks like we have to add these manually ourselves, which is kind of annoying. But oh well. It's probably worth it for the extra performance. I think that's it. Let's kind of recap. So we fired up a web API. We've customized our JSON options for how we want to serialize our content. So if I fire that up again, this should now be lowercase, like so. And we've added a JSON serializer context, which speeds up serialization. It turns out it's just a couple of lines of code that you need to add for each type. We learned that we need to set an array type of the type that you want to serialize and deserialize. And that is good enough to serialize it. We learned also that this is just as fast. This is using the default source generation, and the default source generation outputs metadata and serializer code, and makes it about 30%, between 30 and 40% faster. So yeah, nice. That was a nice little I've lost my words now. Nice stream. We got to the bottom of System.Text.Json serializers. Catch us next week now. We're for some more content. We'll probably be covering More content from my .NET 6 Mega Improvements thread. I still need to look at this configuration manager API that Andrew Locke has blogged about. Andrew Locke, by the way, is amazing. He blogs so much and he does such detailed blog posts with lovely diagrams like this. Like, how long must this have taken him to come up with? Like, how do you even, does he have some 3D modeling skills? I'm guessing he does. That's an amazing visualization right there. And very, very thorough and lots of code, tables. Very good. So follow his blog post if you haven't already. What else? We've got we also need to look at the OpenTelemetry metrics. I need to do some investigation on that. We're going to look at HTTP 3 support in .NET 6. I don't think this is turned on by default. You have to turn it on. So I think it's maybe not ready. So maybe we'll skip that one. I don't know. And I think that's it. And then we'll move on to more fun stuff the following week after that. So thanks everyone. If you haven't already, you can catch me on YouTube and Twitch. Please do subscribe. It helps the channel out. You can always visit my blog and read more about some of the things that I've been doing. And if you have any questions, ping me on Twitter. Thank you very much. Catch you next week.